Whatever
Yeah,
I'm
exactly.
setting up the backends.
I don't think they've got any adjustments for the leaning back control. They're not no fancy chairs. Well, happy Wednesday again. Sorry I missed you Monday. Hopefully that gave you a little bit of time to get working on this next project. We're coming due in a week on this one now for project 3. Let's take a look at our schedule. So we're going to need a little adjustment here. Should be fine. It's going to take us more than just the 25th to talk about arrays. No, maybe not. We might be okay. We'll see how far we get. If we need a little extra time, we'll take a little bit, like on 11.3 or something. If we can't finish up arrays, we'll finish up inheritance today, do some more examples, and then project 3, don't forget, is due on Monday, 10/25. Right, so I'll also talk about the project 3. Oh yes, we won't have time to finish all of it, I think, then. If I gotta talk about project 3. Hopefully that's going well. Classes is a bit different. The Tuesday night class had a little bit of trouble, kind of a mixed bag. Some people were okay, and some people definitely could have done better, for sure. So it's a different way of thinking, for sure, building out classes and dealing with inheritance. So there's no inheritance in our project, but we're still working with classes with the same idea. Right? We have our private attributes, and then we have public methods. And then the public methods let you interact with that instance of the class. So notice none of the classes we've done have scanner, and none of them do any sort of keyboard input. Right? That's not what a class is supposed to do. Your class's job is, if it wants some information to do its method, is it needs to have an argument. Like our set methods are not all that interesting, but if you need to ask it to do something, you have to give it that value as an argument. It's not asking the user using console input, using the scanner, right? All of that stuff that deals with scanner happens in the part of your program that has a main method. Right? If in our main method we want to do something, great, yes, in the main method we'll use scanner and get keyboard input and things. But when we work with a class, we create instances of it, and then we call methods. Right? So we had these methods for all the gets, and nothing super interesting with product here. But that's how we interact with it. Right? So the class itself, and this is a tough distinction sometimes, has nothing to do with the console input and output. It probably doesn't even print things either. You'll rarely ever see a print line in any of the classes we write, because that's not the class's job, and the class has no idea if it's being used in a console application or not. Remember, and print line only works if you're actually looking at the console output. If you're using that class in like a web application, no one's ever going to see it. If you're using it in the mobile application, no one's ever going to see it. If you're using it in a graphical user interface application, no one's going to see it. So if the class wants to communicate something, it needs to return values, right? Again, our gets are not super interesting at the moment. We can look at some other examples in a little bit. Hey, Hector, thanks for coming online on Twitch and donating to the Student Scholarship Fund over at the University of Michigan Dearborn. That's so cool. So we'll do another example today, try and make our class maybe slightly more interesting, and we can interact with it. And that's the goal. So what we're doing with your vehicle, right? When you go to add gas, you tell it how much gas we're adding. It doesn't ask the user anything, right? If the user's being asked something, it would happen in the main method for our purposes, because we don't know how to do a web application or a graphical application or a mobile application yet. Just fun fact, we have classes for all of those. So if you want to put something in your main, perfectly fine. You're welcome to do that. Not a problem, but I don't care what's there. What I care about and what the assignment is to do is to write the class and then to write the tests to make sure that all the things that the class is supposed to do, it does do. And this idea with 100% code coverage. So with your vehicle here, let me go pull that back up here. Right, it's supposed to return specific true or falses. Right, go edit this one. Excuse me. Right? For drive, you're returning a true or false if they're able to drive that distance. In addition to changing the current liters in the tank, right? If they can't drive that far, we'll stop them at 0, make sure the tank doesn't have a negative amount of gas, because our job as a class is to also ensure the integrity of our class. Let's say we're encapsulating all of our details together. We're like one nice little unit, one little package here, and we're going to protect ourselves from getting into a bad state. If I can't have a negative amount of gas, don't let the value for gas currently in tank in liters be negative, right? We have control over what we set it to inside the class code. We can say, hey, stop at 0, right? And then we can give you back a true or false result. So for our testing, if you want 100% code coverage, you need to test a case where it works and you get a true back, and a case where it doesn't work, you get a false back and it stops you at 0. So those are the things we're going to test and we're going to assert, right? I expect it to be like this, just like we would in the main method. Okay, I expect to get this back out. We're just going to assert, okay, it should match this. This is what I'm expecting it to match. For add gas, right, this also returns a true or false. If you try and put too much in, we're going to give you back a false result, and we're going to stop at our gas tank capacity. If you say, I want to put 1,000 liters in, we'll say, okay, and then stop at our capacity, return a false, and the rest of the gas apparently just spills. Right? You wanted to pay for watering the ground, I guess, with gasoline, which is probably a bad idea. But sure, so if you, whatever argument you give add gas, if it's too much, we're going to give you back the false, and we'll stop at our capacity. Does that make sense? So we need to be testing those different cases. Testing where we try and overfill it, and we get back a false, and we stop at capacity, and testing where we just, sure, we can add like 5 liters, and now we have 5 liters in the tank. That sort of thing. And in terms of testing, drive isn't going to work until add gas works. So it's still really a unit test, because we're testing does this unit of code work, but it depends on other parts of our code, and there's really nothing we can do about that. Right? Unless you can put gas in the tank, you can't test if drive is working or not. Right? So in terms of it testing one small piece, we're not testing that add gas works or not. We're assuming, yes, it will do what it's supposed to do once we've written it. Well, we're going to test if drive does what it's supposed to do, which reduces the amount of gas in the tank. Right? If you drive 10 kilometers and you get 5 kilometers per liter, you're taking your 10 divided by your kilometers per liter. That's the number of liters you have to take out of the tank. It's not a math class, the math, it's just a step in our process, right? And then our constructor, unit tests. This makes sense? I think so. Maybe. Okay. Yep. So we'll do another class example. So we did some classes for the class chapter 7. We've done some classes here for chapter 8. We'll do another one when we talk about inheritance. Finish this up. Do we have taxable product? Yep. Okay. So we got a couple more things to look at. So for inheritance, right, we have overridden the get sales price, but we still want to use the parent class's version because we may or may not have access, right? And that depends to the actual attribute sales price. So we looked at if you make it protected, we'll have direct access to it. Protected means private for everybody but me and my subclasses, versus private is only me. So even if you have a subclass, you can't have access to it. So it's an intermediate level between public and private. So protected, generally fine, right? We frown upon making things public, right? Because that breaks that idea of encapsulation, where we want to make them use our methods. Now, sometimes it's silly, like for color, like we're just going to assume whatever color you give me for a vehicle is fine. If you want to paint it fuchsia, we'll let you paint it fuchsia. If you want to paint it ASDF, I don't have a list of every possible color as a string that I can compare it against. So I'm just going to have to trust that you give me something valid. So you can't validate everything, but in general, you want private attributes, public set and get methods. And if your public set method can validate something, right? Like we were checking, hey, making sure you don't sell something for a negative price. That's a good thing to have. if you've got a public set. Doesn't always work all the time, but that's the goal, is that the class, again, is going to protect its integrity. Make sure you don't give me bad values for things. And if you do, just don't take it. Right? Nothing says we have to accept your sales price if it's invalid. If it's invalid, I'm just going to put it to 0. And I mean, I guess we're giving something away for free, but I don't really have a good default otherwise right now in the system. So for quantity on hand, right, I can't have negative something in my shop. Right? I've got to have some amount, and if you tell me negative, I'm going to just assume I have none left, and I have 0. This sort of quantity on hand tracking for stores it's getting better, right? But this used to be like the worst thing. You'd look up and say, oh yeah, we have 3 of them. You go to the store, and they're like, I don't have any. There's none on the shelf. You look in the back, and someone disappears for like 15 minutes, goes and takes a break, comes back and tells you they don't have it. Thankfully, we're getting a little better at tracking this quantity on hand, but tracking stuff is hard sometimes in the real world. Someday, everything will have little tiny RFIDs, right? Because that's not wasteful at all. But it'll save money doing inventory management. And it'll avoid shrink or theft. I don't know why they call it shrink. Any of you work retail? Know why it's called shrink? Okay. I don't know. I thought that was the funniest term. All right, so let's do another class here. Let's look at another class. And we'll do rectangle. This rectangle is nice and boring. I think we did rectangle back in our classes chapter, right? We looked at a rectangle has a length and a width. Right, so private attributes then. Now, we could do integers, we could do doubles. We'll probably go with doubles here. So I'll have a double for length and a private double for width. So the 2 things rectangles know about themselves. Okay? Then I don't like to do a lot of typing here, right? So I'm going to let NetBeans do it for me. I'm going to right click and say insert code and insert some getters so you can get the attributes out. Great. Now we've got getters. And then I'm going to right click, insert some code. I'm going to add a constructor here. And I want both length and width to be provided here. So if you give me length and width, I'll take the length and width. Now, do we want length and width to be changeable? Or do we want to say, once you've created a rectangle, you're stuck with your current length and width? Make it changeable? All right, so if we're going to be changeable, we need some set methods. So we'll insert some set methods so we can interact with these attributes. And then our set methods should probably do some sanity checking, right? So we can check if the length is greater than 0, then we'll do this thing. Otherwise, set our this length to 0. Right? If it's greater than 0, great, take it. Otherwise, we'll just leave it at 0 because we can't be negative. I think that breaks the laws of physics. So. And then same for our width. Here we'll do the same thing. So if the width is greater than 0, sure, we'll take it. Otherwise, this width equals 0, and then give it a little format. It'll make it pretty for me. That source format, it's Alt-Shift-F. It's fantastic. It'll align all of your curly braces for you. It's like the best thing NetBeans does. Maybe not the best. It does lots of other cool things too, but so like you can really screw some of this stuff up and have really funny looking things, and like this can be up on this line here, and and then you give it a format and it fixes it all for you. It's beautiful. That sort of thing is not worth doing by hand, right? I mean, and you can grab like multiple lines and tab them all at once, or shift tab to bring them back. But like if you're doing that by hand, it's just awful. The only problem is it doesn't work if you're like off by a tab somewhere. It has no, oh, that time it worked. Usually it has no idea what to do if you're missing a curly brace somewhere. Yeah, so take advantage of the tool. So source and format will make things pretty for you. Okay, so then if we have set and length and width that have sanity checks, we don't want to redo that in the constructor. So what we want to do is call set length, right? Use our method, given the length, right? And use the set width method, given the width, right? I didn't spell length right. There we go. Right, use the methods that do the sanity checking, rather than redoing that work in the constructor. Right? So the constructor will just say, oh, okay, set length, because a method can call another method. So, okay, so here, if it's greater than 0, take it. If not, we start at 0. Perfectly fine. Now what this means is if I have a constructor that takes arguments, I can't make a no argument, or I can't create an instance of this with no argument. So I come back to my code here, and we want to make a rectangle. I can't say rectangle equals new rectangle anymore. Right, with no arguments here. There is no argument constructor. Remember, if you don't write one, if you don't have a constructor here, what is that? Control comment? Yep. If you don't have one, if I just comment it out, Java provides one for you, and yes, now you can have a no argument constructor. This is generally frowned upon, right? Because Java will give us the default values for all of our attributes. For numeric values, it's 0, Booleans, it's false, and for anything that's a reference type or an object or an instance of something, including strings, you get null. And null is one of the worst things in the world generally, because it will crash your program if you're not expecting it to be null and not being careful about it. Right? I think we looked at that. If your string attribute was null and you try to like get the length of it, you got that null pointer exception. Does that ring a bell? Okay. So those are generally bad. So if you wanted a no argument constructor, you could write one yourself. You could have a public rectangle that has no arguments and just width is 0 and length is 0 or something. The 0, length is 0. You're welcome to do that. Right? That's an option there. To write your own no argument constructor. This is better than letting Java give one to you. I know it's like 3 extra lines of typing, but it's always better to be explicit about your, this is called the default constructor with no arguments, than to not have one. You can have both. You can have a no argument constructor and a parameterized constructor, a constructor with parameters, parameterized. I think that's a word. If not, we'll pretend like it is one. A parameterized constructor. We can do that. I should put this on quiet. There we go. Hey, you're allowed to have both. And then either way you want in your code, you can make one with no arguments, or you can pass it some numbers. Right? Either one will work. This is the idea that you can have multiple methods with the same name, as long as they have different arguments. So they're overloaded. Does that ring a bell? We talk about overloaded methods. Okay. So sure, we could have different constructors. We can have overloaded constructors. No big deal. The other thing you could do then, if you wanted to, is instead of saying length and width, because that feels like a lot of typing, you can say, I think it's this, 0 and 0. And this says, call my constructor, call this object itself with these values. And now it's one less line of typing. And this will call this constructor here with the arguments. Calls the other constructor. So a little weird that it's this with parentheses instead of like, you know, before we've done this dot stuff. But the constructor is a special method, so that you don't say dot anything. So it's kind of a funny syntax, but this is also really common. So you'll just call the other constructor that does all the things. Okay, so we've got rectangles here. We can make rectangles, great. And now we can make a class. Oh, we didn't do the area and perimeter, right? So we want to add, so have a public double get area, and that returns length times width. And then we'll have a public double for get perimeter returns 2 times length plus 2 times width. Right? Order of operations will work in our favor here. Double the length, double the width, added together. Right? I don't think we need any parentheses. That one's relatively straightforward. If you want to throw them in just because, go for it. And you don't need to ever save these variables. You don't need to say, like, here's the double for area equals this thing, and then return the area. No rule that says you have to. If you're just calculating something and giving it back, you can do a single return line. One reason this might be nice is in debug mode, if you want to step into your method and see what's happening, if the only line that it has is a return, you never see the arithmetic. So you'll never see the result until it comes back to the other side. But either way is perfectly fine. Most of the time, if it's like a quick little calculation, people will just do it in a one-liner. There's nothing wrong with doing it with a 2. right, so we got get area, we got get perimeter. Cool. So now let's make a class here. Let's make another one. New class. Let's make a square class. And we're going to say square then is a rectangle. Right? Think back to your geometry class. That is correct, right? All squares are rectangles, but not all rectangles are squares. So we use our extends keyword to say, hey, we extends rectangle. We are a rectangle. We have the is a relationship. We do all the things rectangle does, right? And now what makes us special? Well, really the only thing that makes us special is our constructor. So public square given an int for length. We're going to say super to call the superclass constructor, give it length and length. So super calls the superclass constructor. So instead of super dot to get a method of our superclass, it's super parentheses to call the constructor. So again, same like with the this parentheses is a constructor, this dot will call methods or attributes. Right? Really, that's the only thing we can do with squares. I don't know. What else do squares do? I think that's it. That's not a very interesting subclass. And now we say, so we can pass one value instead of two. But now they're fixed, right? The problem with square now, because squares are rectangles here. If I make a square, square equals a new square, and I give it, say, 4. It's now a 4 by 4 square, I could spell right. Okay? But now when I do my square, my instance of square, right, square dot, what public methods are available to this instance of square? Well, there's a public method for set length and set width. That's going to break my square, right? If I can now go change the length and width independently, I've got a problem, right? This is bad. So we need to fix that. What we need to do is we need to override that behavior, right? We need to have a special behavior for that. So we're going to add an override method. Override for public void set length, given an int for length, and an override. Why is that not an override? Set length is not? What? Set length. Oh, it's a double. Okay, sorry. I was really confused for a minute there. There we go. That's why that override tag is really helpful, right? To make sure you did it right. Otherwise, I wouldn't have done what we wanted. Override. Override. Public void. Come on. Enter. Void set width. Given a double for width. Okay. So if you call set length on a square, what should happen is we should call the superclass set length, given the length, and we should call the superclass set width. No, set width, that one, given the length, right? We'll change both the length and the width. Saying super dot, say, hey, superclass, please run your method. Because we can't run ours because we've overridden it. It would just call itself again. We'd be stuck in an infinite loop, right? It would call itself, call itself, call itself, call itself, call itself, and it would crash. But the superclass version we can do. Again, because we don't have direct access. We don't have a protected attribute length and width. It's private, so we can't touch it. The only way we can get at it is through those public methods. But if setting the length sets length and width, and setting the width sets length and width, now you can't put your square in a bad shape. We've protected the integrity of our class. Right? The public methods you have available to you now ensure, we'll show you width here, that if you change it, it changes length and width. Now, it looks a little funny that you can set them separately, but we at least do the right thing. Right? We're going to make sure it does what you're supposed to do here. So we fixed that problem that we would have, where now I can go and change length and width independently, because now they don't actually change independently. That was a little bit funky, but so with the overriding, we can get the correct behavior of what we want. Right? Okay. What did we do in chapter 7? I'm trying to remember what other examples we did in 7. Don't want to do too many. Let's see. 7 for morning. What other class do we do? Oh, we did rectangle. Oh, bank account. Okay. Yeah, we did a rectangle already, but yeah, bank account. Cool. So if we had this bank account class, right, it had the, sorry, it's a little small. It had the balance, the owner, the type, and the account number, those sorts of things here. We couldn't change most of those. We could change the owner. We can withdraw and deposit money. So these are the ones you're kind of looking at for those examples for your vehicle, by the way, right? Like if it was bad, don't do the thing. If it was good, do the thing, right? In our case, we weren't changing the balance at all. We just told you, no, you can't do that. Right? With your vehicle, we're going to go to 0, run out of gas, and then tell them no, or we'll fill up the tank to capacity and then tell them no, right? Rather than just saying no. But the bank's not going to say, if you ask for $1,000, they're not going to say, oh, here's 100, you did it wrong. I mean, maybe they would. I don't know your bank, but I feel like banks would not process a transaction. That's invalid. But the gas station will let you pump gas on all over the ground because you're still paying for that gas. At least for a little while. Then they'll probably come out and yell at you. But for a little while, you'll be able to pour gas all over the ground. Right? Okay. Not funny in the morning. I'm sorry. I guess that's not funny at all. I found a good joke, though. You folks look really bored. I'll have to tell you jokes. Where's this one? What? That's not it. Oh, come on, where'd it go? Just had a really good one. No? Yes. So some people might have noticed. I don't know. We don't talk all that much outside of class, but I'm a little bit sarcastic. I don't know. It's probably just a general trait of my generation. We like sarcasm, and you folks probably do too. But we don't really talk a whole lot, so I don't know. But I was being really sarcastic one day, and my dad was like, your sarcasm is not going to get you anywhere. And I said, well, it did get me to the Sarcasm World Championship in Peru in 1998. And he said, really? I said, no. All right. Rectangles and squares, doing some basic inheritance. Again, we don't need to get too super deep on inheritance because you're going to pick it up again if you continue on in 2151, object-oriented programming in Java. I can't say the word Mao. I don't know if I can actually do that as a word ban. I will try. I will try not to say that word. I think that's what, for 5 minutes? Was that it? So okay, till 10:40, I'll try not to say that thing. That's a tricky one. All right.
That worked way better than I thought it would.
To try and ban it in real life word. So if we wanted to do something else with bank account and not have to reinvent the wheel, right? If we wanted to, oh, I did it. I said, it's like the knight who said knee, right? I said the word. I said it again. So if I could take bank account again, I'm just going to copy paste here for a second. It's not the worst thing. We'll make a bank account. And I'll paste it in here. It does all the thing bank account does, but that didn't copy. Copy. Paste. It didn't. I think NetBeans does this to me sometimes. That is weird. Let me go open it from here. Recent projects. Chapter 7, morning. Here we go. We'll go get it out of here. So NetBeans, like the copy paste works within NetBeans sometimes, and then restarting it will kick it back. But all right, so just copy pasting here, and look, I'm going to cite my source because this is good practice, right? Let's say from here, right? That's a citation. I've now cited my source. Clear? Okay, got a bank account, and I can close that project back down. that one. So if we wanted to do something additional with a bank account, make this one a little bit special. Like maybe we let you earn some interest on a bank account, right? We could do that, but I don't want to change the original bank account class because I don't know where else it's being used, right? And sometimes changing the original can cause downstream issues because other people really like your code and all sorts of things. So sometimes inheritance is the answer. Sometimes. It's not always an answer, but sometimes it can be. It can be. I'm going to make a new class here, and we'll have this be, say, like an interest. Is that interest-bearing account? Is bearing the right word? Oh, goodness. That's not fair. Interest-bearing account. It's a right word, I guess. Interest earning account? How about earning? Let's do earning. Interest earning. That makes much more sense. I'm going to do refactor and rename, because this will rename the file at the same time for me. Remember with Java, the name of the file has to match the name of the class. Interest earning account. Refactor rename. Okay, an interest earning account then is bank account. So if my superclass bank account has a constructor that needs owner and type, I need a constructor that has owner and type, right? Because I need to pass those up to my superclass. So interest earning account then in my constructor will take public interest earning account given a string for owner and a string for type. Now we have two options. We can have the interest passed to the constructor and then have a set and get method for it. We could have a single static variable that exists once at class level here, and then it's set once for all instances, but I think it is possible they could have different values for different accounts. So for our purposes, we'll probably take a double for the interest rate. For interest rate. Okay, so then the first thing we're going to need to do is call our superclass constructor. We'll have a private interest rate. And then we will call our super given the owner and the type. So say, hey, superclass, use these for your constructor, please. Right? Then we can set our interest rate, but we probably want a method for it here. So let's add some sets and gets. So we'll insert code for getter for interest rate. And we'll insert some code. All right, I owe you like 2 more minutes because I kept missing the word, right? Is that fair? Oh, man. Send it again. All right, so if interest rate is greater than 0, sure, we'll take it. If not, we'll say the interest rate is 0. Instead, interest rate is 0 equals 0, and then our constructor can just call our method set interest rate given interest rate that was given to it. Okay, so cool. Now we can get interest rate, we can set interest rate. Now we need a way to add money, right? How do we actually earn our interest? So we need a method for earn interest. So earning interest needs to change the balance. And we need to change the balance and increase it by our interest rate. Now again, I know things don't work exactly like this. If the bank says you get 1%, you don't get 1% every month. My son was super bummed when he learned that. We're like, hey, you can put money in the bank and you can earn interest on it. And he's like, oh, really? I give interest every month? I'm like, well, yeah, but you get a 1/12 of what they say. And he was really let down. But so we'll take a 1/12 of the interest rate. Maybe we'll even say this is earn monthly interest, right? To be very specific here. We can earn monthly interest. So we need to get our current balance, multiply it by a 1/12 of the interest rate, and deposit that amount. So we'll have a double for interest earned is going to be our interest rate divided by 12, right, to make it monthly, times my get balance. Right? The get balance method I have access to. It's a public method. I am a bank account. I don't see it defined here, but I know it exists in the bank account class. I don't need to say super.getBalance because I haven't overridden it. Right? If I haven't overridden it, I can just say getbalance and it will do the right thing. If I have an overridden version for getbalance, then I would need to be specific. Do I want mine or my superclass's version for getbalance, right? Then I can call deposit, given the interest earned, right? And we can just deposit that amount, whatever that rate was, 1/12 of our interest rate times the balance, and we're good to go. Does that make sense? So now we have an interest earning account without having to redo bank account. So that's one of the reasons inheritance is really cool. Right? We can do all the things our parent class does and then make a special version of it. We're going to add some functionality to it. Again, it might be nice just to modify bank account and just default the interest to 0, but you don't always have the option of modifying the parent class. So that's one option here, is to go this route. Okay, I think we've covered all that. Let me double check here real quick. Make sure we got all the good stuff out. This was 8. Double checking here. Because again, we're not doing everything in the chapter. There's more to inheritance that we're not getting into. Let's see. It's all good. Yeah, so we're not getting into the checking equals. We're not doing abstract stuff or final, so that's all fine. So because we're only doing partial of what's in chapter 8, I propose we don't do a quiz on chapter 8 and we just skip that, as you've only done maybe half of it. That sound okay? And again, you'll pick up the topic next semester if you continue on. Which, did I tell you the winter schedule is out, by the way? Which is super cool. It is out and available. You can take a peek and see. And then, did I mention there's some federal grant money things? Did I talk about that? I finally got the subject line. It's like HERF something or other. So if you register for classes, they will send you money, part of the federal grant program. But you have to ask for it. So after you register, you'll get an email saying something about HERF. I'll find the exact subject line here. But anybody, even if you get financial aid or not, can get the grant money. If you are getting financial aid, you'll get more grant money, which is fantastic. So it'll pay for more. Let me log in here. Pay for more courses. And I'm curious, I know it might be a little funny here, polling you folks who are in person, but do you have preferences for classes? Do you prefer in-person classes? Do you prefer online classes?
Hybrid science. Yeah, I like that.
Okay, so I only have control over my courses being this hybrid flex format. It's still unofficial at the college. We're working on. I've got a couple faculty members. We meet together and talk about it. So we've got a guy in history doing it. Someone in math. Someone in nursing was looking into it. I forget what other disciplines they're in, but hopefully it'll be an official format at some point. But for now, we have online synchronous and online asynchronous. So like this 1500 course is online synchronous, especially Zoom meetings, but not in person in the classroom. But you're still meeting at a given specific time where you can meet and chat and ask questions live, versus an asynchronous, right? Like this web programming with Dr. Baugh is fully asynchronous. There's no live meeting times. So we've got, those are two different options out there in the catalog, but we're working on taking the software engineering program, is the one I know the most about because that's my specialty, to be enabled to be done fully online without having to come in person, but still have in-person options and remote online options. So I'm hoping my flex format will qualify for that. I have to figure it out and see, but I might have to have some of the courses offered just fully online, asynchronous or synchronous options in the future for some of our higher level courses. But next semester, 2151, I got two options. You can take it out at Auburn Hills, Tuesday night, or here with me Tuesday, Thursday mornings, if you're continuing on taking the next Java course. And again, the plan is to do this in this flex format as well. So in person, online via Twitch, and just watch the recordings. So I know Zoom is also an option. I'm not a fan of Zoom at all. Sometimes people said they wish they could like talk live, but I've got the Discord server for that, and no one has ever said they wanted to. So I feel like people just say it, but they don't actually want it. I don't know. So I think Twitch has been fun anyway. And then the recordings are super easy for me. I can just push them out to YouTube. If it's recorded over Zoom, it's a smaller pain to store those recordings and do stuff with them and whatnot. So this one's nice. Yep. And then C++ with Dr. Baugh or Mr. Nasser. I don't know what other courses you folks are taking. If you can, I would recommend, and Dr. Baugh would recommend, you don't take data structures right away. You take 2151 first, and then you come back another semester and take data structures. So the prereq for data structures is just 1500. If you look at the description here, it's doable. Where's our prereq? With only the knowledge from 1500, but there's a lot of things that are taken for granted that you've learned in 2151 that just make understanding it easier. Right? You can just do it and follow the examples and the templates and it will work, but you don't really know what's happening behind the scenes. So definitely recommend 2151 first, if you can fit that into the schedule. And then 2454 with me, you can do this after 1500 or 2151. It's PHP for the first half, and then Java, JSP, web server stuff for the second half. So you don't need lots of Java. 1500 should be fine for the things we're doing. Weirdly though, we do a bunch of database stuff, and if you haven't taken the database course, that all seems like magic. But the 1200 course is not a prereq for this one. It's a little bit of a mess. I'm sorry. Apparently a while back they tried to get rid of as many prereqs as possible to make it easier for folks to take classes, just for like either transfer credit or whatever they were doing. So yeah, any other thoughts, questions, or concerns about courses coming up in the winter? Cool. Yeah, registration will open soon, so that's pretty exciting. And they've got the new priority registration schedule. Forget how that all works. I think it's said somewhere in here. Details. Yeah, based on your academic standing. So this is actually good. So if you have more credits and you're in an active program, you can register first to get first pick at the classes that you need to graduate. And then students with less credits get to register Tuesday, and then anybody can register Wednesday. So if it's a class you really want, make sure you get it in on Monday, because then it'll open up to everybody the next day or the day after that. So this is relatively common. They let people, seniors generally register first, and then juniors, and then sophomores and freshmen, and so on. So if you've got 30 or more credits, you're a sophomore, right? So you get priority registration, which is cool. Okay, cool. So that, I think, will wrap up inheritance for us. Folks did great. Let's finish up working on project 3. We got the rest of today to work on that. If you got questions, thoughts, or concerns about this one, again, I'd love if everyone gets 100%. That makes me super happy. I don't think I made any changes, so I'm going to say yes, discard. And I'll commit the code we did here. So next week, we'll get into arrays, the array list. We'll talk about the project 3 solution. We'll do the last bit of midterm prep. Right, we'll go over the sample midterm on Monday as well. Yeah, we'll have a couple things to do Monday. So we probably won't finish arrays. If it needs to bump a little bit till after the midterm, that's not too big of a deal. We should be fine with that. And here is chapter 8. Let's push this one out. And push. All right, all that'll be online for you. We can go from there. Don't forget study group Tuesday and Thursday, 1 to 2 with Mr. Tim, or individual tutoring sessions as well. I've not had anyone send me a note saying that they did one of those and wanted bonus points, but I'll throw all the bonus points on at the end. I've got a spreadsheet from Mr. Tim he's been keeping for me, that's who comes when. I just look at it at the end when I throw grades in and throw a couple bonus points at you, instead of doing it 1 per quiz. That just is honestly, it's a little harder to track that way. So I'll get these last 10 graded for you here. I thought I did that last week, but apparently I didn't get through all of them. So I'll get those ones in and scored for project 2, and we'll go from there. So for the midterm, I was going to give you both those days for it. Just probably don't need both, but that way you've got the entire week and you don't have new stuff coming at you if you didn't get it done right away. The goal is you could finish it in 2 hours in a sitting. It's meant to be short and sweet, but this way we'll take the time pressure off, so you don't have to worry about that. Again, I don't know, it's time does matter a little bit. Like you can't take, 5 weeks to get something done in the workforce, but whether or not it takes you 1 hour or 4 hours, like as long as you're getting the job done, that's generally what we look for, right? And most software jobs are not paid by the hour anyway. It's a salaried position where it's the work has to get done, not you have to sit at your desk in your seat for 40 hours, clock in and clock out sort of thing. So the industry works a little differently as well. Not that if you're getting all your work done, you're out of there in 20 hours every week, but generally at that point you get more work, but that usually comes with pay raises and things like that. So it works out. So yeah, the 1027 and 11.1, it's open book, open notes, open internet, not open neighbor. You'll agree to that in the very first question, and that everything is your original work unless otherwise cited. If I wrote a question that you can Google the answer to, that's my bad. Okay. So for the long answer questions, they're pretty nonsensical example things like pick a petal from a flower. I don't know. And finding the answer online does not mean going and posting it on Chegg and then saying, oh, look, the answer was online. Right? I used to assume people would understand that was not cool and that was cheating. And someone had looked at me like they were super confused that they posted the question on Chegg, got an answer, and then cited their source. They're like, I cited my source. It's like, no, Chegg will tell me who posts questions. Like, if you post a question on Chegg, I can file an incident with them, which is why I hate them, because they're awful to go through all these hoops. But they'll tell me the name, the date, and the time, everything, all the information about when it was posted. And they're like, no, it was you. You posted it. And they're like, oh yeah, I did that. Like, it irritates me. I'm sorry. So we won't do that. We're going to agree to not do that. So unless you want me to come to watch you take the test, I'm just planning on not meeting the 27th and the 1st, right? Because it's open book, open notes. You can do it from wherever you find convenient. If you want to come to campus to use the computers here, great. Let me know. I can come let you in, or we can use the lab over in the ASC. Great. But we'll plan on not meeting those 2 days. Okay, and then we'll pick it back up. We'll finish up on everything else we need to get through, and we'll be in pretty good shape. Yeah, if everything has to bump a little bit, I think we'll be okay. I just don't want to get too far back here. So 11.3, yeah, because I want to get this last project done before Thanksgiving break, so we can do the final. Okay, yeah, we should be in good shape here. All right, so project 3 Monday, and then the only thing you have to worry about for the week is the midterm, and we'll come back after that, pick up whatever we missed for arrays, the next files project, project 4, do that for 2 weeks. Exceptions we're not going to go super deep on. Again, it's a topic you pick up in 2151, but you need to know a little bit more about how they work. We did the try-catch here. There's a little bit more we can do in chapter 16, and then we get into Java FX. I have more Java FX examples we'll go through, and then we've got project work time, where I'm not even going to talk at all. It's just if you folks want to show up, work together in pairs. If you want to show up and have me look at your stuff, we can do that. And then we'll present Monday the 20th. We're cruising. So we are almost done with new material. It's pretty cool. So we got essentially 1, 2, 3, 4 more chapters left in the text. We only do just the tiniest bit of 12. I'm not even counting it. Okay? Awesome. You folks take care then. If you're remote, just ping me on Discord or send me an email or something. I can hop on a screen share and we can go from there.